All right, hello everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Megan Mendiola and I'm a regional marketing coordinator here at JMT. We are very excited to have our very own Zachary Griggs here with us today to lead us in our webinar. He is an FP&A practice director here at JMT, and he's going to tell us about how Vena can help leverage your budgeting and planning needs. So this webinar is sponsored by JMT Consulting. We are an ERP and financial management solutions consulting firm. We have over 28 years of experience specializing in nonprofits. We partner with a wide variety of software partners to find the best solution for your nonprofit. So just a couple housekeeping notes here before we begin. If you have any questions, please go ahead and submit them into the Q&A section of your control panel. We're going to save all those questions until the end of the presentation, but don't hesitate to go ahead and submit them as you think of them. Also, just a reminder that we will send you both the slides and the recording of today's webinar within 24 hours after its conclusion. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Zachary, to get us started.
All right, thanks, Megan. Just to build a little bit on my introduction, my name is Zachary Griggs. I've been with JMT for about 8 years now, and previously I had been the Director of Finance with JMT for about 4 years, and today I am the FP&A Practice Director, and we focus on working with the Vena solution as a primary recommendation when it comes to FP&A. I always like to mention that I previously was the Director of Finance because I like to bring that into any of the presentations that I give or whenever I speak about a product. I was on the other end of the table. I was the end user, the consumer of what that solution offered at JMT, and that's really how I approach any type of implementation or conversation or recommendation to our clients or prospects. So today what I'm going to do is take us through, at a high level, what is Vena? What is the solution at Vena, and what are the things that it offers? I'm also going to get into why nonprofits consider or prefer to work with Vena in comparison to some of the other solutions that you might hear about on the market. I'm also going to get into specifically how Vena can provide value around any type of data collection, making that process more efficient. How can it address data integrity issues that might come up in an Excel-based process, things like broken formulas, multiple versions of the truth, numerous users in the same file at the same time. How can Vena help you address those types of issues and streamline your process overall? Then I'm going to get into the audit trail that Vena offers and visibility into the history of when numbers change. If you have a staff of numerous remote individuals, it's difficult to track back who's changing what when you're using an Excel-based process. And whenever you're going through and you see a significant modification to a number, to a budget, or a forecast, you need to check back into, okay, who changed this and when? And Vena makes that very easy, and I'll show you how. And then we're going to get into some board and stakeholder reporting and how Vena can enable you to create these reports at a click of a button. So rather than spending your time reformatting PowerPoints, Word documents, et cetera, you're actually going in there, hitting a button, you get the latest and greatest, and you can spend your time on higher value tasks, like analyzing the numbers and preparing for that presentation. So here's a quick NASCAR slide about some of the clients that Vena works with. A little bit about Vena. It's a cloud-based solution that leverages Excel as the point of entry. So just about everybody in finance uses Excel, loves Excel. It's a very flexible tool. You can do just about anything that you can dream up within Excel. And what Vena does is it addresses the negatives, the bad of Excel, the fact that it's difficult to collaborate, controls around the data integrity. It addresses those items, but keeps all the good of Excel. And just to showcase exactly what I mean by that, if I hop over here to my local Excel, you'll see here on this screen that up top, I have this tab for Vena. So that's all it takes to associate your local Excel with a cloud database within Vena. I'm going to hop back over here. They have roughly 700 plus clients. I think that they're up to 800 or so. About 25% of those are nonprofit organizations, many of which JMT works with. It's a very competitively priced solution, but also very powerful. You'll notice on this one slide, there's a lot of larger organizations. You see Arizona Cardinals, White Castle, Nike even. So these large multi-billion-dollar corporations can leverage the functionality that Vena offers. And what JMT allows is for us to offer this powerful solution to our are mid-sized or smaller organizations as well in the nonprofit space. So very competitively priced yet powerful. So a little bit about why we find that nonprofits prefer to work with Vena. The biggest thing for us is the end user adoption. JMT never wants to recommend a solution that an organization is not going to use for the long term, that their users are not going to adopt, they're not going to see value in having that solution. And Vena addresses that by leveraging Excel. We all know and love Excel. And so you don't have to learn, you don't have to have your staff learn a whole new solution. It's very easy to get in there and begin using it right away. And you'll notice once I get into the templates in just a few minutes, how much it will remind you of exactly how your formatted templates will work today. So there's very little that you have to learn when it comes to Vena. Whereas some of the other solutions that are out there, you have to get into a browser, log in, learn where the different data lives and navigating that system. You don't have to do that when it comes to Vena. It keeps it very straightforward and really leans into what we all know about Excel. Also the fact that it's a cloud-based solution despite leveraging Excel. So I'll show you exact examples later in this demonstration, but the data isn't going to live within your Excel. That's just simply a window into your database. It still lives in the cloud. So if you have one staff that's working out of Los Angeles, and then you have another staff or office based out of New York City, you can have both of them in there entering in data to the same templates, collecting the same budget information, projection information, and they just simply have to hit save, and it'll upload into the database, and then you can run reports from either location at any time. It's automatically consolidating that content and letting it all roll through into a holistic view of your organization. It's a simple plugin. I showed you just before how in my Excel I have a tab that says Vena on it. It takes no more than 30, 60 seconds to install. There's no need to involve IT, and there's no recurring installs where you have to leverage your IT department to go into each machine and enable the product's changes. They do updates on a quarterly basis, but those being a cloud solution are automatically rolled out. So there's no need for you to have to go through any larger installs. It also integrates with many of the other solutions that are out there. Cloud-based solutions, for the most part, you can have those speak to Vena and have the data flow back between each one of them. Those can be things like an HRS system like ADP. You can have Intact, Salesforce, NetSuite, Microsoft Dynamics. Any of these popular solutions that a lot of the organizations today use can integrate with Vena. So you don't have to worry about moving numbers between your two different systems. It'll all flow naturally between them. You can also, and I put this on the agenda to specifically drill into this, you can easily create board-ready reports. So you're saving a lot of time on the formatting and moving around of numbers between Excel sheets and formulas. You're shifting that into instead analyzing what those numbers are telling you. So it's giving you more visibility to your stakeholders, your funders, your board, your finance department, visibility that you previously might have had trouble gaining that visibility using Excel. It's too difficult and labor intensive to be populating those numbers in all these different sheets. And then the robust audit trail that Vena offers. Auditors love it. Finance departments also enjoy being able to see who's changing what when. Being able to manage, especially in today's environment, being able to manage a highly remote and dispersed staff that are all working on the same consolidation of numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over into a demonstration of the product. I'm going to go through two different views. One view is going to play the role of a controller or director of finance, could be a CFO, essentially the manager of the process, somebody who is maintaining that process from start to finish and managing a team of individuals that, in this case, can be remote. The process that we're going to focus on is going to be the creation of a board-approved budget. Now, that could also be a projection, could be a reprojection. You can use it for month-end close. You really have a lot of flexibility when it comes to what that process is. But for today's demonstration, we're going to focus on creating a budget. The other role we're going to take a look at is going to be the contributor view. That could be somebody within finance. That could be somebody that is focusing on your programs. But essentially, any user that needs to contribute in some way to that process. How do you create the budget? What are the numbers getting entered? Who needs to run a report or approve some other individual's entry? That would be called a contributor. So I'm going to hop over here to my Firefox. And you can use any popular browser. I use Chrome and Firefox. Once you go on here, because it's a cloud-based solution, you simply need internet connection. on your laptop anywhere in the world, and then you can access everything that we're going to look at today. It's going to be simply your email here, and then you log in. So the first view we're looking at is the manager. This is that controller, director of finance role. We're going to focus here on the creation of a board-approved budget, but just to show you a little bit more about this. You can also set up processes such as a month-end close or a year-end close. When I click into this, what this enables your managers to do is create a workflow. And you'll see there's a start and an end, and then several tasks that need to happen in order for me to get to my final goal. So in this case, you're able to map out exactly what you need to happen. Month-end close might be a 10 to 15-day exercise that a lot of different things need to happen. Different staff are managing each of those different tasks. This gives you the ability to map out. This is all drag and drop, and you can customize this to what your process needs to look like. You're able to go in here and map out exactly what needs to happen at each stage, at each date, in order for you to hit your deadlines. And if I hop back over and we take a look at the budget creation process, this one's a little bit different. So within here, this might normally be a 2 to 3 month process for you to go through and create this budget. What this allows you to do is, rather than have this black box of a process where it's difficult to see how far along any one individual is in that process, you can go in here and you can break it out to be as granular as you need. And you can even have, you can see here, if I at the start, I have some reports that I want individuals to have available to them. I also have a pre-budget meeting that I want to make sure that that's taking place. Maybe some expectation setting with my team. Let them know how we're going to approach it. Let's do a zero-based budget, or we have some assumptions from prior year activity, how we're going to build that out. But you can set up some non-Excel-based tasks as well. Then we get to this stage here, and maybe this is where your finance staff are entering in some various drivers or percentages. Maybe you have some fringe rates related to personnel that you want to get entered into the system. But you're able to have this take place before anybody else gets to these stages. And you can see that the workflow is working from left to right here. Once you get to this middle, this is the input stage of the process. I kept this very simple and simply broke out the operating expenses from the grant management and then any personnel planning. But if you have multiple departments, different programs, different individuals, you could make these various boxes or tasks more granular and split them out in that way. If I double click on this, you'll see I get a bit more detail. So within here, you can see I can assign a task, the due date of that task. So in this case, I want to give them 2 days from whenever they get started. So after the rates get entered, this Frank and this individual, he's our contributor today. Frank has 2 days to complete entering in his operating expenses and then submit them. I can also go in here and I can put in some instructions. Vena takes the approach for nonprofits of giving a one-stop shop when it comes to budgeting, planning, and reporting. Because you only ever have to log in. All you have to remember is your email address and your password, and then you can simply log in and have everything at your fingertips in one place. So within there, you can have some instructions. So this can be up to 250 characters or so, just a few notes for Frank, so that when Frank logs in, he knows what's going on, has maybe some indicators or reminders of what he should be considering. You can also put some supporting documentation. These can be JPEGs, PDFs, Word documents, really any file type. You're able to associate these with the individual task. So when Frank logs in, Frank doesn't need to go dig up different emails or go into a shared network and find other files that he previously was working on. Everything is in one place. It makes it very easy for that end user experience, which all facilitates that end user adoption. If they feel like this is improving their process, they're much more likely to accept the use of the product and use it on a recurring basis. Down here, we have a couple examples of different templates or tasks or forms that are related to the task. So in this case, it's broken out between some project-related expenses and then some indirect expenses. These templates are where the Excel format comes into play. These are Excel files that you're associating with this individual task. So when Frank goes in, he can access whichever template he's currently working on. And these can look very different. So for operating expenses, that structure is going to look very different than what it might look like for personnel here. So you can get very granular as far as how you build these out. If you want one format to be specific for one program, whereas another program, maybe your IT department has it structured slightly differently so they can manage the different licenses, you can do that. You can accommodate for that very easily. And I'll show you once I hop over to Frank's view, the difference between the templates and how they look. And you'll also notice in here that within personnel, I can put in different instructions, import active roster from ADP, and then input some forecasted hires, and I can have some different attachments. The attachments, the instructions, the users, due dates, All of that is specific to the individual task. So if numerous departments are treated in different ways, you'd be able to accommodate for that very easily. This is all submission of content, these gray boxes here. And then you get to these light green boxes. That's an approval. That's automated approval within the system. So if Frank goes in, Frank completes the entry of operating expenses and hits submit. As soon as Frank does that, an email notification is going to go to Frank's manager that's going to allow them to click in and either approve, reject, modify the data that Frank has submitted. The manager can be located across the country. They can be in Los Angeles, whereas Frank's working out of New York City. And as soon as they hit that submit button, that data is now available for the manager to get in there. So it streamlines and makes it more efficient for you to, between many remote staff, the ability to go into the system and access exactly what was done down to the minute. You can immediately, you have it available to you. No need to move things around between Excels or reformat. And you can have separate approvals for each one of these tasks. You'd have multiple stages of approvals. You can have approvals set up so that if somebody is out of the office, you have a secondary approver that can stand in for that individual. It can also facilitate those. This is a very simple workflow, but then after that, once everything is submitted, it goes to this final reporting stage, which allows whomever, let's say finance in this case, to go in there and confirm that everything balances. All the budgets look like they should. Around the notifications, there's this tab here. So as soon as you hit this play button, it looks kind of like the front of a VCR up here. This is how you turn this process to turn it on, essentially. Once you set up your workflow, you're the manager, you're happy with what needs to happen, who's involved, you hit this play button. As soon as you do, it shoots off a notification to all the staff that are involved, and it lets them know, hey, let's get started, and it might have some information about what's going on within the process. But it's that easy to get everybody in the system and get started. You also have some flexibility to set up some other notifications. These are all right out of the system. You just simply flip the switch and you can turn them on. So previously where you might have had to knock on somebody's door or you have to shoot them an email outside the system and then you can't remember, did I let this person know that they should get started or have I not done that yet? This tracks all of that and it automates it as well. So you don't have to worry about those secondary steps that are happening. You just simply hit the play button and then everybody gets started. Once everybody gets started, what often happens if you have an Excel-based process is difficult to track who's working on what at any given time. So what Vena does is it has this status tracker tool right here. Kind of looks like a gas gauge. I click on this. It brings up this view of the data. And what this allows the manager, the director of finance, the CFO, whomever you want to give access to it, gives them this ability to see how efficient the process is, who is taking time, who's currently working on what tasks, who's already completed their task. And you can see when is it due. You can also see in the calendar view when those due dates are coming up. So it gives you a different, more managerial view into the different tasks that are taking place over this, let's say, 2-month process. And if you have a very large team, you'd be able to isolate here, okay, how many different tasks does Frank have on his plate right now that he's working on? If you think of an Excel-based process, it's very difficult to replicate. You'd have to track back and have these individual conversations. You don't really have that visibility at your fingertips, whereas Vena enables you to have that. You can even see up top here, if you hover over any one of these, you can see, okay, what percentage of the process is submitted, work in progress, started, were there any things that were rejected, maybe you had some tasks that are overdue. It makes it very easy to get this visibility down into the individual tasks that are required to take place. Okay. So far we looked at everything from a manager standpoint. And just to showcase it, Vena gives a tremendous amount of visibility that is really unheard of in an Excel-based process. But now what we're going to do is flip the script and take a look at Frank's view, the end user. How does Vena address making the end user more efficient and give them also an easier process to create their board-approved budget? So I'm going to hop over here to this browser. So as soon as Frank logs in, and in here I'm in Chrome before I was in Mozilla Firefox, same process. You simply put in your email address and your password and you're in the system. But when Frank goes in, what it's going to do is take him to this screen here. And Frank's a contributor, so he should be on this contributor tab. And this is probably the only one that he'll see. You'll see it's got a lot less going on because he doesn't have those manager views. But once he comes into the system, what it's going to have is a to-do list. And you can see up top it even says to-do. And that's all that this is from top to bottom. In the top section, in this blue, this teal, it has what are the current tasks that Frank should be working on. And this will only show Frank what Frank is responsible for. So if you have multiple departments, multiple staff, multiple programs, Frank will only see the Frank-related tasks. So each user will only see what's related to them. You also have this gray section down here, which I really love, because if, let's say, Frank is very busy and it's difficult for him to find time to work on these different items, it gives him visibility into what's on the horizon. What are the next things that are going to be that flow through that he's responsible for? So if you have a more robust workflow that has multiple stages of inputs and approvals, where Frank might be involved at the start, and then down the road, maybe in a couple weeks, he'll be involved again. This is going to give him that visibility into that. It's going to have those tasks broken out as well. So he can plan around the entire process and what he needs to contribute to it. In this view only section, the green section on the bottom, there's two different things going on. One of which is this top financial operational reports. You can set up dashboards, board reports, but just simple day-to-day operational reports. You're able to set those up right within the system, and then Frank can have access to this at any given time. He can log in, simply run those reports, and he's going to have the latest and greatest data as soon as he runs them. So this is always available to him. You can also have down here, let's say that we go in and we've submitted the operating expenses as Frank. Now, if you're using email and Excel, you might have had to email that off to finance or whomever, your manager, and then you have to dig up through old emails if you ever want to go take a look at that again. But what this allows, what Vena enables, is that say that Frank goes in and submits the operating expenses, it'll actually go down here as view only. So at any point that something's been previously submitted, Frank can always go back and take a look at it. He always has the visibility into things historically that have already been submitted. And if, let's say that the manager modifies a number, Frank can see what that new number is. So you're not taking away any visibility, you're only giving him more, and you're giving him visibility into the upcoming tasks as well, all in one place for him. So what I'm going to do now is going to get into some of the input templates, and then we're going to go and take a look at some reports after that. So if I click on one of these tasks, these are all individual tasks. So if I click on this detailed budget input, it opens up this side panel on the right. You'll notice it looks very similar to the manager view. The difference is you can't change these. You can't click in here and change the instruction, but you can see what instructions your manager put into the system. So this is giving Frank some indicators. Okay, I need to include some context or comments if my variance is over 20% from prior year. I can go into my supporting documents and I can access all of these. You see most of them are Word documents, a PDF here. There's a step-by-step guide. There's some instructions that I should keep in mind. Maybe I have some consultants or contractors I work with. I want to have some of those contracts right within the system. I can easily click from here and download those files at any given time. I can even put in some comments in here. So maybe in my department, Frank works in IT, and I have 2 or 3 other individuals that are also contributing some information for their respective offices. Maybe I want to put in here, so from LA, say, please order new phones. You're able to put that kind of content in here, like type. You're able to put that content right into the system, and then the next time that somebody else accesses it, they're going to go in there and they're going to see those comments. So you have this ongoing dialogue related to the individual tasks at any given time. And you can even attach documents down here using that Add File button. So now what we're going to do is take a look at those templates. So you'll see over here there's a checkout button in blue. Once I click on that checkout button, what it does is it opens up an Excel file on my computer. The checkout button also changed from checkout to check in. So a common issue with Excel is that if you have multiple people working on the same thing, then you don't know whose number is the one that you need to go by. What if somebody updates one cell and somebody else in a separate file opened or changed that same cell and they both emailed you? You then have to reconcile and figure out which one's the truth. And so how Vena addresses that, it has this checkout, check-in functionality. And think of it like a library book. Frank has checked out this budget. So Frank is going to currently be working on, let's say, his IT budget at the New York office. So nobody else can work on the IT budget at the New York office. If somebody is in Los Angeles working on IT, they can do that, though. It doesn't lock them out for that. It's just simply for that individual combination of the location and department in this case, it's going to prevent anybody else from changing the numbers. Once you click on this, though, you have this Excel file, and this is just like opening any Excel from on the internet, from any cloud-based source. Once you click on this, it's going to open up, and it's opening up in my Excel. It'll take just about the same amount of speed or time it takes to open a standard Excel. But the difference is that because I have the Vena plugin, this is a Vena template, is I get this box here. This is where I'm telling the system what data I want to look at. You'll notice in the background I have a template, but it's not populated with any content. There's no numeric values in these cells. There's no GL accounts. I haven't told the system yet what I'm going to look at. And that's where within here, I can hit these drop downs. And in this case, I have a few different dimensions. And these are all custom to your chart of accounts, so whatever, however you view your data in your organization. If I go in here and I take a look at, all right, I want to look at Los Angeles, and we're going to stay in program services, but if we wanted to go to a different department, we could. I'm going to stay in 2020, but you can also look at retroactive activity or future periods, maybe a 3-5 year contract, or you want to plan some occupancy cost out 3 to 5 years. You can do that very easily by simply selecting a future period. I can also do some scenario planning, especially in today's environment. If you have some what-if scenarios to account for, okay, we didn't get the funding we expected, or we need to open another location or office. I want to put this into a specific scenario, but I also want to have a different version of that that's not impacted. This makes it very easy to do that. And think of it like hitting Save As on an Excel file, having 2 different versions of it, and then being able to play around with how different changes impact each one of those files. You could do the same thing here. We're going to stay in budget for now, though. Once I've made my selection, I just hit OK. It's going to take a second right here just to load the data. Shouldn't take more than 1-2 seconds. And then now that exact format of the file has been populated with data. And this data is coming from the cloud because it's already been saved into the database. I can delete it, and then all I have to do is hit this refresh button. And as soon as I do, you'll notice it comes right back. And the reason why is because it doesn't live in Excel. If you think of a normal Excel, if I deleted that and saved, I would have lost it. And I have to find an old version of that Excel file. That's not the case when it comes to Vena because this is just a window into the database. So if I make a modification to these numbers and I want to change that in the cloud, I simply hit this big save button here. That's the Vena save button. That's saying, okay, I'm going to make a modification, and now I want this to save into the cloud. I chose to look at Los Angeles, but let's say I change my mind, and I actually want to look at the New York location. I simply hit this choose box. I don't want to save my changes. I didn't change anything material. And then I come in here, and I can toggle over to New York. I hit OK. You're going to see that the format in the background stays the same, but all the numbers change because all of this is related to that New York location. So it makes it very easy for Frank to be entering in data across numerous departments, numerous locations, programs, et cetera. So it's very easy for him to navigate these, whereas you think of this in an Excel, you might have multiple files, you might have numerous tabs, 50, 75 tabs within a workbook. It might be slow to open that Excel. This is very quick because you're only looking at one slice of the detail at any given time. But once I save this, once we get into the reporting, you'll notice that it's going to roll up naturally for us too. So entry is much easier, but it also streamlines the consolidation of those different locations or programs. So once we're in here, if we wanted to change around some of the information, this is all Excel. Anything in light blue is where we're enabling Frank to make some modifications. So if I wanted to go in here and drag this across, I easily can. I can put in some formulas. I can use some functions. You'll notice I have some conditional highlighting, where in this case I need to put in a comment because as it was mentioned in the instructions, I need to put in a comment whenever it's 20% over the prior year activity, and I went from 18 to 24,000. Now, something that also comes up in Excel is, okay, what if somebody breaks the formula? What if somebody overwrites the formula? Everything within Vena is locked down, so I can't change these numbers. You'll notice here that I get a warning that it's been locked. And anything that's not light blue is going to give me that same warning. So there's a ton of data integrity controls in place so that Frank is given visibility, given access to all of these different areas of the system, but is also there's controls around exactly what he can change and what the expectation is around what he will change within the system. So within here, let's put in a comment. So this is all free text still, and you'll notice that once I do the conditional highlighting updates. Now, if I go in and I hit Save Data, you're going to see that this bar is going to go across. It's going to take 2 or 3 seconds. Usually it's based on your internet speed, but it's uploading from this template right into the cloud, and it's pretty quick. So once this has been saved, if somebody is at another location, they hit refresh, they now see that latest change that I just made. Now, what if somebody, let's say the manager, goes in and they want to say, all right, what did Frank change within the system? That's where the audit trail is helpful. So what you can do is you can say, I know that this in January, the number is different. You can hit this drill and then drill saves. What this is going to do is it's going to give you visibility into what was changed within that cell. If I make this a little bit larger, you'll notice it'll tell you the date, the time of day, who the user was, and then what they changed. In this case, it was changed from 1,300 roughly and it was changed to the number 2000. I just changed that. So you can very easily see who's made changes from what and to what. Now, what you can also do, maybe you don't know that miscellaneous expenses was changed. Maybe you wanted to find out what was changed overall within this specific location. That's where you can go to this audit trail. Once you hit this audit trail, if I make this a little larger, you can see who's been in the system, date and time, user, who's been in the system, and what are they working on. In this case, a lot of New York, there's some Los Angeles changes being made here. So you can very easily see who's changed what. Now, what you can also do is this will run in perpetuity as well, so you can go as far back as you'd like. What I can do is take a look at, let's say, March 5th here. And if I click on that on this individual date and time, I can hit view. And when I do, it's going to open up this file as it looked on March 5th. So that would give me the ability to see exactly what it was and what it is today. To make it even easier, I can highlight both that and today. And all I did was hold control on my keyboard. And now I've selected the March 5th date and the March 19th today. And then I can hit this compare button. And when I do, what this is going to do is it's going to open up both of those templates, or it's going to open up a single template that shows me the difference between the two templates. So if I hop back over to OpEx planning, you can see a lot has changed. And it highlights right within the system what cells were modified by Frank in this case between March 5th and March 19th. So this tells us what was changed, but if I hover over one of these numbers, it tells you what the value was on March 5th, in this case, 1,600 and some cents, that hasn't been rounded, and then it was changed to 2,000 today, which we just did. And you can do that on any one of these cells, and it's going to update you and tell you exactly what was modified. So it makes it very easy to trace back what somebody has modified within a given template at a specific location, and this will just run naturally in the background. Trying to replicate this in Excel would be very difficult to trace back that type of level of detail. I'm going to close these out now, and these are just other files. You can see I had new and old in here. Let's go back to our input. So within here, we have a few other options as well. If I click this plus sign, we have the ability here to choose, maybe we want to put our office supplies in here as an annual number. We'll put 5,000 in this case. And then you can spread this. You can say, okay, I want it to be even, so I'm going to do straight line, or you can do it quarterly, any one of these. You can base it off revenue. And what you can also do is based off of headcount. Maybe you have some other metrics that you're tracking related to your programs that you want to use. Maybe you want to use square footage related to your occupancy across different locations, things like that. So you're able to use non-financial information to dictate the seasonality and allocation of the financial data. You can also put in there percentage over prior period. You can see here I want to take, whatever the prior year number was for revenue, and then increase it by that number or that percentage of revenue for that line item. So you have a lot of flexibility here as far as coming up with those numbers. So if I collapse that, currently we're looking at FY20. I hit this other plus sign here. Now I gain access to the prior year. So we're in FY20, and I have FY19 here. And you'll notice that from January to September, these are all in white, and these are locked down. I can't change these numbers. What this is, these are your actuals, and you can see that as a column header here. So you have your actuals feeding into the system. One of the things I mentioned earlier on the PowerPoint was that the Vena integrates with just about any solution that you have within your finance office, especially your ERP or your GL software. So if you have a cloud-based solution, many of them can get integrated right with Vena. If you have an on-prem solution, you can have a report run and then load that right into Vena. So it makes it very easy to get that data, those actuals, right into the system so that they're visible to Frank in this case. And you'll notice that it's through September, so as soon as I load October, this would then convert over. It would load in the activity and it would lock down, so I can't change it. And then the expectation would be, okay, now you need to forecast for the remaining months. I have actuals through October. To take it to another level, you'll see here that I have about $6,000 in my advertising and development expense. And if you think of a normal process, you'd have to email finance, you have to log into your ERP or GL system. You have to take that secondary step to figure out, okay, what's making up that number? Why is it higher than all the other months? What are the transactions that got booked to that within our GL system? What Vena enables you to do, keeping in mind that one-stop shop, putting everything at Frank's fingertips here, is I can click this drill button. I can drill into the transactions for that individual number. So once I do, it creates a separate tab, and within here it breaks out for that January number. You can see I had 5 invoices or 4 invoices. They're broken out by these vendors. I can see the invoice number, I can see the amount, if there's a quantity, if they have a location, who was the individual that it was associated with. So anything that's coming over from your GL system, you can have that integrated to also be available right within Vena. So no need for Frank to hop into a different software, no need for Frank to call up or email somebody in finance asking those questions. He can drill right into this. It's all permission-based as well. So if you don't want Frank to be able to drill into this, you can simply limit his access so that he cannot. So a few other things from the input standpoint, what you can also do is when you think of this travel line item here, travel expense, we might have another level of detail that we want to capture. Another example might be you have different subscriptions or softwares, and you want to break out what are the different softwares that exist within the system. But you don't want to break that as a different GL code. In Excel, you can very easily do that. But within Vena, what you're able to do, let's say for the software example, is I simply hit this insert button up top, and then I can put in here, okay, I need it to be intact and Vena. So now I'm able to say that I have 2 different softwares that are going to make up this number, and then from there you can put in various costs, and then it's going to automatically summarize them for you. So you'll see up top, now it's going to add up the 2 different values. If I double click on this, it's locked. The system's smart enough to know that I'm just putting in another layer of detail, but I don't want somebody to overwrite the summary row. Right, so it gives that end user the capability of putting in a little bit more detail beyond just the GL. But now if you want to take it a step further from that, and you think of your travel expenses, you're able to set up what's called a supporting tab. So you'll see in here I have travel expenses, and all of this is linked over from here. If I click on this tab, you'll see I have my travel expenses, and I can break out what is the event they're going to, who is the individual going to that event, where are they going to and from. You can put in some average cost of trip, length of trip. You can even choose within here how you want to spread that expense. If I go in and I choose, okay, I want it to hit in February, you'll notice that the expense now hits in February. At my visualization up top, that chart is going to update as I make those changes. And as soon as I make that change, it's going to update on my first tab and feed back to my finance department to align with what's happening here. So you're able to, without having to change your chart of accounts, without having to change your GL accounts, it's very easy for you to go in there and create these supporting sheets where you're requiring a little bit more detail. And you can have some charts as well. You'll see up here the travel is getting broken up by the type of expense, the airfare, rental, et cetera. Whereas over here it's giving you a visual as far as how that expense is broken up over the 12 months of this period. Right? And all of that ties back over here. And you can have any number of those supporting sheets. So whatever is relevant for you. In this case, we use travel, but you can use it for software if you needed to, different licenses. If you're an events-based organization, you can base off of that. If you have various donations and contributions related to your revenue, you can set up a supporting sheet as well to get that next layer down of activity. So this has been overall the input of data. And this is just one sample of a template. If you have numerous department layouts and formats, you can have different layouts for each of those departments. So it's very flexible to set it up for who your different consumers are or who the different contributors are to the entire process. You can also leverage your existing templates. So if you have some Excel templates in the format that is perfect for you, perfect for your staff, you don't have to worry about rebuilding all of those. You can if you'd like, but you're also able to leverage them where you just, it's called Venanize them. You essentially map them back into the database, but you don't have to rebuild them from the ground up. I'm going to close out this template. When I do, it's going to give me a warning, just like if you closed Excel. It's going to say, do you want to save your data? In our case, we're not going to. I'm going to skip past that. Then I get this warning here that says, you want to check in this file. And so before, when we did check out, check in, this is where I'm saying, okay, I, Frank, am done with this template, so now I can hit check back in, and now this is available so that somebody else can access the software and go into, in this case, IT, if that's what they're working on. So let's go back here. So that was just OpEx input. Let's take a look at personnel planning. Same structure here. I have the checkout, and as soon as I do it, switches over to check-in. You might have your personnel getting managed by HR department instead of by Frank. It could be the same user. In this case, we're going to go in as Frank again, but you can break it up to be however your organization looks at the different areas of your expenses. In here, you'll notice I don't have as many choose options. whenever the template opens. In this case, I'm just putting it in for the year, the relevant year. Once this loads, it's pretty straightforward as far as the employee detail on the upper left. This demonstration, very simplified model, but you can have this set up to be as complex as your workforce planning is. If you have multiple employee types, different unions, different state rates related to, let's say, SUI or any benefits, multiple benefit plans that you wanted to automate, how it's calculating those expenses, you can structure it around that. In this case, we kept it very easy, and you have in here, you input the employee ID, the name of the employee, their start date, their work state, and so on. This is going to calculate what their expense is. And if you scroll over to the right here, you have the amount of that expense broken up straight line across the months of the year. If you wanted to base this off of number of payrolls per month, and you have let's say 26 payrolls, 2 months are going to be 3 payrolls, you can have that set up as well so that it'll put the higher expense in those months to align with your actuals. Now, what's going on up here in the case of Frank Smith is that you also have the ability to allocate those individuals, and this is just direct allocation. So let's say that we took Chris here, and we hit insert a couple times. What you're able to do is you can select specifically, in this case, what projects is Chris working on. Maybe it's your programs, maybe it's by grants, or could be across departments, things like that. It's really however you're breaking up your expenses and allocating across those different dimensions. But in this case, we're going to just break it off across 2 projects, and we're going to say, okay, I want Chris's expense of 142 to get broken up as 75 and 25. And then I simply drag this across, and now I've allocated Chris's expense. If I scroll over to the right, you're going to notice it's going to allocate the expense into each of the months across those 2 projects. So when I do my reporting on that given project or grant, I can very easily see everything roll up from all these different sources. This is just direct allocation. So if I wanted to, instead of manually put in these numbers, I wanted it to pull in some timesheet information. Maybe I have some percentages that I got from Chris's manager about his LOE on the different areas. You can also have that all automated. Just simply here, it's showing that you can also make it very easy where you're inputting the numbers. If I go to the bottom left down here, this is the indirect employees. Similar to up top, the only difference is that if I come in and allocate this individual, I actually can allocate across multiple dimensions. So in this case, maybe John is splitting some time between finance and admin, and he's doing some administrative tasks related to the project number 2, and then finance is just direct finance activity. So I can take John's expense here and allocate it so that if I ran a report on finance versus admin versus project 2, it makes it very easy to get that slice of his expense, his benefits, his fringe, his salary and comp. All of that is going to then flow back into those individual dimensions. Right? And again, you can automate how it's doing that allocation. This is just showcasing that you can easily enter it directly as well. You have the same capabilities up top. You have an audit trail. You can drill into if there is any type of history, or if you have actuals coming in, you could take a look at that right from here within the system. It depends on what you're enabling within the individual templates. I can also toggle between I'm going to save my changes. I can toggle between the different years. So if I'm planning out a year or 2 down the road, I can easily do that. Or if I wanted this to be based on different locations, I wanted to focus on my Los Angeles versus New York, you can make that a choose box here as well. I'm going to hit cancel here. I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to check that file back in. So when I'm done entering in my information, all I need to do is hit this big submit button up top. As soon as I hit that, it's going to take this individual task, personnel in this case, and send it off to whomever my manager is, whoever the approver is in this process. So it's very easy for me to make my updates, save them into the database, and then submit them. And I don't need to send off emails or upload it to a different location. I simply hit submit, and then the system will automate that transfer of knowledge and notification to the next individual. Okay. So that's a couple examples of how input is structured. Now, if we hop down here to this financial and operational reports, once I click on this, you'll see there's a lot more going on in here. I have some instructions, some supporting documents, again, specific to this task, in this case, reports. I also can put in some comments if I'd like. But within here, you'll notice that a lot of these are in Excel, but there's a couple of them. This one's PowerPoint, this one is Word. So if I go in here and let's open up PowerPoint. Once I click on this exact dashboard, I'm going to have a few different drop-downs, similar to before where they were in the file. It's going to put them right within the browser actually for this PowerPoint report. This is an example of some board-ready reports. So you're able to structure this, set it up ahead of time, and then each time that you have a board meeting, maybe quarterly, monthly, annually, you can just simply run this, and you can run it for, in this case, you can choose a specific location. I can choose, I'm going to, in this case, look at the entire organization, but you can be as specific as you'd like when you ran this report. And simply by hitting this dropdown, it'll update all the numbers within the file. Let's look at 2019, and then we just download this file. So just like before, where it was opening up in Excel, this is going to open up, but what it's going to do is it's going to open up within PowerPoint. And at this stage, this is going to be native PowerPoint. There's actually not even a plugin that you need to load. It'll just simply, once you've installed your Vena plugin, it'll work here too. But once I go in here, if I skip over here to the second slide, you'll notice that there's a lot of numeric values, some charts, some graphs. If you think of having to maintain this manually, you'd have to go in there, update where it's getting this information from. If Frank changed some numbers, I need to then go figure out where he changed those numbers and how do I get it updated within my PowerPoint in my slide deck. But within here, what this is doing is pulling the latest and greatest information right from Vena. So I don't need to worry about having to do anything manual. It's all going to just naturally, as soon as I hit run, all of this on those two slides is going to populate with that information. If I had chosen a specific location, it's going to show me for that location. So I could have ran this for New York, Los Angeles, and so on. I can also have it, some of these bold comments in here. You'll see that's populating right out of Vena based on the information in the system. And then what you're able to do now is you can either leverage this exact PowerPoint, start to add in a couple other slides, put in some context, some text within here, comments. You're able to do that right within PowerPoint if you'd like. You can also copy these slides right from here, put it into a deck that you already have set up. It's up to you. This is just PowerPoint at this point. And you could do the same thing here for Word. I'm going to do that real quick. And you'll notice that I don't have a checkout, check-in button. It says View. And that's because it's a report. So there's no changes happening. So I can have 10 different people running the reports at the same time. It's not a problem within the system because nobody's modifying the numbers within the report. Let me give this just a second to load. And so whichever your preference is, if you prefer to use PowerPoint, prefer to use Word, it's really up to you. They function in very similar ways. You get to map back the data. You'll see a slightly different format here, but the same concept. All these bold figures and numeric values, this chart, it's all pulling right out of Vena. So as those numbers change, this will update with you. And then within here, if you want to put in some information about market conditions, some recommendations, see down here some more charts, you're able to do that right within this file. So you can create some board packets very easily. So instead of spending your time moving numbers around and formatting, you're spending your time actually putting in some context, expertise, analytics around the numbers. So I'm going to close that. So those are two examples of how easy board reporting can be out of the system. So data collection has been streamlined. You make it very easy for Frank, your different department heads, your programmatic staff from all over the world, anywhere with a network or with the internet connection, to enter in that information. Once it's in the system, you can very easily run these right from Vena, and they have the latest and greatest data that's already been submitted. Now, a few other examples are you can set up some dashboards as well. So in here, we're going to take a look at a corporate dashboard, and we're going to go back into Excel now. Right, so same thing as before. You have some choose boxes. You can choose the entity, department, the year, scenario, et cetera. We're going to leave this as is for now. But if you wanted to run this for Los Angeles and so on, you have the same capabilities. So once this loads, it's going to take about the same amount of time it takes to open the other file, relatively quick. And then within here, you can see you have some visualizations. You have some, in this case, some charts. Up top, you have some KPIs. Down on the bottom, you have some values. In this case, it's related to individuals, headcount, overtime. You have some new hires. And then down here, you have it broken out, new hires versus terminations across your different departments and locations. I can also hop over here to my strategic dashboard, and then I see my gross margin, my operating expenses, maybe my revenue or donations, contributions by location as well, broken out. And all of this is set up around how you view your organization. What are your KPIs? What are the metrics that you keep an eye on? But it gives you a holistic view of your organization. So you can see not only financial information, but you can also go in there and take a look at your non-financial information, like headcount, like patients served or patients seen, meals served, things like that. Anything that makes sense for your organization, you can track back and tie it all together in one place. Right? Just keeping an eye on the clock, what I'm going to do is take a quick look at some financial statements and then leave some time for questions. Again, we're going to be in Excel. So you have your same choose boxes. It can be anything that applies to your organization as well. So in our case, we've been looking a lot at entity, department, but if you wanted to run things by, let's say, contract or grant, program, you can do that as well. It's associated with what your chart of accounts is. So in this demonstration, this is the chart of accounts for this organization, but you'd be able to structure it around what you currently run your financials on. So once these run, you'll notice a pretty standard statement of activities here. I'm looking at FY20. I have the same plus sign up top where I can take a look at FY19. I have actuals coming in through September, October, November, December, or some budget values. So I have a projection on the year. Along each row, I have my different account groups, total revenue, OPEX, my salary. I can see everything rolled up. And if I go down, I can drill into the same information. So just like before, where we were looking at the actuals. Sorry about that. I click on this one, I can click on the transactions right here. So I can drill into those right from this report as well. Makes it very easy to get back to the root level of data. And then on the far right, you have some indicators as far as prior year versus current year. What is the variance? You can also take a look at a balance sheet. It's a pretty standard balance sheet. Within here, if you expand up top, you have some visuals here. If I scroll down, you'll notice that there's also a balance check, so I can make sure that my balance sheet is tying out. None of this is input. For the vast majority of it is not input for both the statement activities, balance sheet, cash flow. All of that is coming from other sources from the system, either actuals, budget, forecast. So this is simply a report that's looking at that other activity that's already been entered into the system. Cash flow, very similar. And then up top, you can also see some visuals as well, some charts. Right. And all of this is getting updated as things change. So if I run my statement activities, I hit refresh, Frank made a change, I'm going to see that change immediately as soon as Frank has submitted it. If you want to have some approvals in place, you can have it so that it's approved before it shows up. But by default, as soon as Frank makes that modification, wherever he is in the world, it's going to populate here. And that's where that cloud collaborative environment that Vena is really shows. You can also hit this choose in this view, and then you can run this exact same report for any one of these different locations. If I wanted to look at my programs, development centers, total organization, individual location, I can. I don't need to rebuild these reports. I don't need to rebuild these templates. It's leveraging the same format and structure, but allowing me to pull in the data that's relevant for what I want to look at. So I'm going to hit cancel here, close this out, and we got about 7 minutes left. So that's everything I was going to showcase within the product. Let me hop back over here to slide deck, and I think that the last thing we have is if there's any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Zachary. It looks like we do have a few questions here today. So the first one is going to be, does Vena integrate with on-premise solutions?
Yep. So Vena is a cloud-based solution, and if it's a cloud-to-cloud, it's very straightforward. You can have the two talk to each other and have it feed over the information on a recurring cadence. If you have an on-prem solution, let's say like MIP, what you can do is have a report scheduled so that it spits out that report with the data you need. That would be, okay, I want my transactions to load on this recurring schedule. So as soon as it spits out that report, Vena will accept it and then have it feed into the system. So you can have that automated as well.
Great. So another question that we have is, how long does implementation take for this specific solution?
So it's heavily scope dependent, but it tends to fall between 6 and 8 weeks, depending on how much you want to put into that phase one, get yourself set up. It's roughly how long.
Great, thank you. And so it looks like the last question that we have as of now is, do we have to rebuild all of our Excel templates to work within Vena?
So you have the option. JMT will make recommendations as far as these are the type of templates that we've seen a lot of organizations like yours leverage, but what you can also do is take the templates that you currently have and simply map them into the cloud, into Vena, and then it'll accept that data as well. So it's whichever your preference is, but it could be a mix of both.
Great. So it looks like that's all the questions that we have for now. And just a reminder, if you do think of any more questions that you want to ask between after this webinar is over, we will send you the slides and the recording of the webinar. So you always have the opportunity to send in your questions there after we send out that email with the slides and the recording. So if you think of any questions between now and then, please go ahead and let us know when you get those, when you get that email. And so it looks like we're done today, so I'll go ahead and go into a conclusion here. So we hope you enjoyed this presentation and that you join us for future events and webinars as well. You can find out about those by visiting our website at jmtconsulting.com and clicking on the events tab. We have a free webinar coming up on Wednesday, March 25th. It's going to be over seamless end-to-end integration of your donor systems. So we'd love for you to join us for that as well. And you can find it on our website at jmtconsulting.com. And so I just want to thank Zachary for being here with us and leading us in a great presentation today. And thank you everyone for joining us today and listening in. And with that, we'll go ahead and conclude today's webinar. So we hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day. Thank you.